And in this video, we're going to practice some long division with polynomials. I've got an example here for us to start with: x cubed minus 3x squared plus 4x minus 1 divided by x plus 2. And what I'm going to do is rewrite this as a long division problem, just like we would do long division with regular numbers. So I have my polynomial, x cubed minus 3x squared plus 4x minus 1, and I'm going to put that under the dividing bar, and I'm going to put x plus 2 on the outside. Now when I look at these two things, I'm looking at the first term in each polynomial. And the question that I need to ask myself is, what do I multiply times x to get x cubed? Well, I know if I multiply x times x squared, that would give me x cubed. And so I'm going to write x squared, and notice that I'm lining it up with the x squared that's in the polynomial. So I have x squared on top. Now I'm going to multiply that times x plus 2. I need to multiply it by both of those terms. X squared times x is x cubed, and x squared times 2 is plus 2x squared. Now, just like in regular long division, at this point we're going to subtract. But when I subtract polynomials, I need to distribute that subtraction sign to every term in the polynomial. That means that my x cubed is going to become negative and my 2x squared becomes negative. I'm changing both of their signs. X cubed and negative x cubed, those cancel out, which is what we want to happen every time. We want that first term to cancel out. Negative 3x squared and negative 2x squared equals negative 5x squared. And then now I'm going to bring down the next term, 4x, just like you would do in regular long division. So now again, I'm looking at my first term x and my first term negative 5x squared. And I want to know, what do I multiply times x to get negative 5x squared? Well, that would be negative 5x. It's lined up with the x in the polynomial that I already have written. And I'm going to multiply negative 5x times x plus 2. Negative 5x times x is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times 2 would be negative 10x. I'm going to subtract. And when I subtract, that means changing both signs. So the first one becomes positive and the second one becomes positive. Negative 5x squared plus 5x squared, those cancel out. And 4x and 10x gives me 14x. And I have one more term to bring down, minus 1. So now I'm looking again at the x, and at 14x, what do I multiply times x to get 14x? Well, of course, that would be plus 14. I'm going to multiply 14 times x and 2. So 14 times x is 14x, and 14 times 2 is 28. I'm ready to subtract, and when I subtract, I'm going to change both signs. 14x and negative 14x, they cancel out. Negative 1 and negative 28 would be negative 29. And negative 29, that's my remainder. And so I'm going to write it as a fraction plus negative 29 over x plus 2, which was what I was dividing by in this problem. And that's our final answer. In my next example, I have x to the fourth minus 4x squared plus 3x minus 2 divided by x squared plus x minus 1. So this time I'm dividing by a trinomial instead of a binomial. And so that's going to make this a little bit harder. I also want you to notice in the first polynomial that we're given, I start out with x to the fourth, and then it jumps to x squared. Here in between, there's no x cubed term. So when I rewrite this under my long division symbol, x to the fourth, I need to add in here a plus 0x cubed as a placeholder, because I could have x cubes that I need to think about while I work this problem. So I'm going to add in a 0x cubed right there after the x to the fourth, and then go ahead and finish writing out the rest of the polynomial, because there's no other terms that are skipped. And then we're going to divide by x squared plus x minus 1. Now again, to start this off, you're just looking at the first terms of each polynomial. And I want to ask myself, what do I multiply times x squared to get x to the fourth? And of course, x squared times x squared is x to the fourth. So I'm going to put x squared lined up with the x squared in my polynomial. And let's multiply. X squared times x squared is x to the fourth. X squared times x is, of course, x cubed. So now you can see why we need that 0x cubed there. And then x squared times negative 1 would be negative 1x squared. I'm ready to subtract. And when I subtract, I need to change all the signs. X to the fourth becomes negative, x cubed becomes negative, negative 1x squared becomes positive. X to the fourth minus x to the fourth, those cancel out, which should happen every time. That first term should cancel out. 0x squared and negative x, 0x cubed and negative x cubed gives me negative x cubed. Negative 4x squared plus 1x squared gives me negative 3x squared. And then I'm going to bring down another term. All right, so now I'm looking at the x squared and the negative x cubed. What do I multiply times x squared to get negative x cubed? Well, that would be negative x. So negative x times x squared is negative x cubed. Negative x times positive x would be negative x squared. And negative x times negative 1 would be positive 1x. You can put the 1 or not, you don't have to. And we're ready to subtract. I'm going to change all of my signs. The x cubed becomes positive, x squared becomes positive, the 1x becomes negative. Negative x cubed and x cubed, they cancel out. Negative 3x squared plus 1x squared is negative 2x squared. And then 3x minus 1x would, of course, be 2x. And then I've got one more term to bring down, minus 2. So this time the question is, I'm looking at x squared and negative 2x squared. What do I need to multiply times x squared to get negative 2x squared? And that, of course, is minus 2. So now I'm going to multiply. Negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. We are ready to subtract, so I'm going to change all the signs. That becomes positive. This becomes positive. The last two becomes negative, and we're ready to combine. Negative 2x squared plus 2x squared is 0. They cancel out. 2x plus 2x is 4x, and negative 2 minus 2 would be negative 4. Now I have no more numbers to bring down, and so this is my remainder. So I'm going to say plus 4x minus 4 divided by x squared plus x minus 1. And that is your final answer.